All right, I call the meeting of the Merrimack School District Budget Committee to order for October 13th, 2020. And I would ask very politely if my fellow veteran Brian would rise with us in the Pledge of Allegiance. To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, our first order of business this evening is the approval of prior minutes, which I assume everybody has received and had a cursory inspection of. And I would like to know if anyone has any alterations, amendments, considerations, deletions, or whatever relative to those minutes. Then can I have a motion to approve the minutes as written? Thank you, Carol. Second. Thank you, Mr. Guiliami. So signify a vote in the affirmative by raising your right hand. Minutes are approved. Excellent. Well, we have had the unfortunate loss of a member of our budget committee, fortunately to the school board, because she has an enduring interest and energy relative to our educational system. So it is now our job to fill the position left by Jenna Coakley-Hardy's appointment to the school board. And the question is, what is the pleasure of the board? Shall we address the vacancy, or shall we move on with the established number that we have, or any other options that one might want to alter?
I recommend, let's see. I think it would be great, since we had so many awesome people, interested in serving in the community, that we fill it.
Would you care to make a motion to that effect?
I'll make a motion that we fill the vacancy.
Do we have a second? All those in favor so signify by raising your right hand. Well, the good news is that we found out soon enough that we could ameliorate our loss and continue planning for the future. Now, we've already got a calendar worked out, which Pat is going to distribute. Pat's very efficient. She had a calendar worked out whether we appointed or whether we didn't appoint without any bias. So all right, our proposed schedule is that we will discuss the vacancy this evening, which we have, with some brevity, I might add, and that the letters of interest are due on October 23rd, 2020, at the superintendent's office. Any resident of the town of Merrimack can apply to be considered for appointment to the empty seat. Excuse me? Registered voter. Yes, I'm in somebody's kids can't do it, even though they're residents, right? So any registered voter residing in the town of Merrimack can in fact apply for the empty position. And those letters are due at the superintendent's office October 23rd, 2020, presumably at the end of business day. On October 27th, we will interview candidates and fill the vacancy. And this now provides us for an opportunity on the 17th of November to have a training session with the full board. I had anticipated we might have a training session before this, but events precluded us from doing that. So we'll have a full board and have a training session. That, by the way, will be open to the public. And be glad to have the public participate and understand what the responsibilities are of this particular public duty. And on the 1st of December, we will review prior and current budget CIP liaison assignments. It's not necessary at the moment, but I would like everybody to be considering what kind of a liaison assignment you would prefer. And then we will try to accommodate that when we submit our forms for liaison. But I want you to be giving it some thought. Whether you're more interested in the elementary schools or the high school or whatever division of interest budgetarily that we have that you might like best to serve in. And we will do our best to try and get you onto that kind of spot. Now, this is a couple of things that are open for discussion. Things are really crazy all around us with the COVID-19. And in fact, there has been some recent infections at Town Hall. So if it was off our mind, it should now be a little bit more focused on our minds about how we cope, particularly in regard to the budgetary responsibilities with the school district. I would appreciate very much if our school district liaison, which is Andy this evening, I guess Jenna Hardy is going to be the alternate? Yeah. We have no idea whatsoever, as a full board, what the present disposition is of education and the budget and the approach. Many of us may suspect that given an increase in COVID-19 cases, the schools may possibly have to shut down and do complete remote or whatever. But we have not heard that from the school district, but I think that it's imperative that we get as much information as possible from the school board, that we might have a heads up relative to where they are now presently and what their port of destination is for the next school year, what kinds of concepts that will affect the budget or whatever. So I don't know how much of that you might be able to share with us tonight, Andy, but the floor is yours.
So you have the same questions that I do. So one of the things that's...
A little closer to the mic, Andy.
It's right here. Close enough now?
A little closer.
I'm like an inch away.
Then speak louder.
Okay. So you have the same questions I do, because we on the board are asking the same questions. I mean, for example, at 2 meetings ago, Matt Chevenel described what he thought the excess to return to offset taxation was, but did not provide the details. And normally, in a normal world, he'd come in front of the Budget Committee first to present that detail and then go to the school board. So that's one level of detail that would normally happen around now that hasn't. The other piece of it is that we are trying to understand what the model is going forward. You mentioned we're hybrid and remote mixed today. There's also a third cohort called those that are quarantined, right? Those that are hybrid that are quarantined because of like the sporting things that happened. We have many questions about, I mean, the end of October, the 31st was the date the administration had put as the stake in the ground as to how they would go beyond, you know, what would be in November and December. We on the school board don't know the status of that right now. So I'm hoping at the next school board meeting, which is on the coming Monday, we'll have a whole lot more vision into what the rest of the first semester will look like, what the plans administration has is to handle that, what their process is going to be for budgeting, and we frankly need to have a discussion at the school board level as to what the important areas are that we need to fund, what areas are where funding needs to be more, where they need to be less, where we need to adjust. So the bottom line is you hit on all the high points of the questions. I don't have the answers today. I'm hoping that Monday gets us closer. So I think the important thing will be is how we because of the way you have your meeting set up, where you've got your next meeting on October 27th to interview, my suggestion may be that we plan on that meeting to give an update, since you're going to have the board, you know, together, to have that maybe an update if we're ready at that point to share with you any more details we've got. I'd rather do it in a public forum like this so that everybody hears it. In lieu of that, we could do it through indirect email that you could then send out. We could create a communication path. But the long and short of it is that we're trying on the school board to get the same level of information that you have just sort of described. So that's the status I have today. Didn't answer your question.
Are there any questions of Andy by any of the board members? Carol,
Do you have any insight?
closer to the mic, Carol.
Yeah, I've learned you got to really talk loud.
Do you have any insight as to the reason why Matt updated the school board prior to the budget committee, since past practice has been the opposite? Did he tell you
Well,
why?
To be clear, he's only given us the high-level flyby. It's like it's 4 point something. I can't remember but it's more than usual because of the lot that hasn't been spent. He took the action to get the level of details. I don't know why. I mean, I would have expected if he wanted an update, he would have contacted, you, Chuck, as a chair, to do the update. I honestly don't know what process he's choosing to use at this point in time.
Okay.
So, I mean, it's really up to, you're right, the typical approach is he notifies us what the overall number is. He comes to you to give a summary of last year and the summary with the details. I mean, I know people have asked, what are the details of all the line items that have been underspent or what you're returning or whatever. He's putting that together. He should present it to the budget committee first, then the school board, if past practice is true. In this year, I'm not sure the approach, but I would leave it, it's going to be something we're going to bring up at this next school board meeting, obviously. But I would imagine, you as chair, Chuck, may want to reach out to Matt directly just to find out what is in his mind, because I'm not sure.
Thank you, Andy.
Pat?
Past practice has been that he gives the budget to the school board after it's been audited first and presents to the budget committee second.
That's not the way you're talking about the report of the last year, and that he's,
Bring it till after he gives it to you guys first.
I will disagree with that, because I believe that he's always gone to the budget committee first and then to us. So, at least the last several years anyway, so. But anyway, regardless, we both need to hear it, both bodies need to hear it, whether who goes first or second. Frankly, it doesn't bother me one way or the other, as long as the information is out, because I think the taxpayers need to understand where all this came from, because it is a good guideline, if you will, or a preview potentially of how the budgeting will go for this coming year. Areas where we've underspent, area where we're expending might be more. We need to understand that, so.
Any other board members have any questions of Andy? Thank you very much, Andy. I realize that it's within the power of the chair to call for that review, but what I would like to do is I would like to poll the board for a consensus of having the statutory review that is necessary scheduled for October 27th.
I would just chime in and caution, you want to make sure that Matt will be ready on the 27th. I mean, it's good to have it first, but just verify. But
I'm sorry, Andy, I can't quite hear you.
I said, before you commit exactly to that date, I would verify with Matt that he'd be ready on the 27th.
Well,
I don't know.
quite frankly, Matt is required to be ready when we solicit that information. That's what the statutes call for.
I'll leave that up to you. Work it
Yes,
with Matt.
Carol.
Finally get this thing to turn on. I guess my thought process is, and I don't know how we could do this by a vote, but maybe we could just do it by an advice to the chairman of, I'd like to see a conversation between you, Chuck, and Matt to find out what his thought process is and if there's any reasoning behind his schedule. If there's a legitimate reason why he's doing it the way he's doing it, I don't have a problem with that at all, but I am curious to know what the reasoning is, and personally, I would say after you have that discussion with him, I would be comfortable relying on you to pick the scheduling date based on that conversation.
Is there other discussion? Do we have a consensus that the board wishes to receive that review?
I just want to make sure that it's as thorough as possible. And I like what Carol is saying. Just touch base with Matt and say, we want it the 27th. Is it going to be thoroughly ready? Because that's when we'd like to have it.
I'm sure that the superintendent is always ready. He is a master at what he does. He has institutional knowledge that is deep and broad. I'm sure that he would be ready at any opportunity. My job as your chairman is to facilitate the desires of the board. As Andy pointed out, I could, as chair, call Matt to perform that specific duty, which he's required to do under statute. I was simply looking for a consensus of the board that they would like to have him appear and entertain his financial review. Brian?
So just to make sure that it's clear, this is the review of the 1920 budget or of the 2021 budget?
Pat, could you just please refer to the statute so that we have a full understanding of what is required? Oop.
RSA 32 requires or allows the committee to ask for a review of any budget in any detail they want. And they get to tell the administration what it is they want.
So I guess what I would wonder is, in terms of if we're talking about the current year budget, how much is that still in flux because of it not being clear whether it's going to continue in hybrid, go to full remote? And is he going to be able to present us quality information on this year's budget? It would seem that there was a lot of change at the end of last academic year. So reviewing the budget from the end of last academic year would be a good starting point. But I would wonder to what extent there's really any valuable insight that he'll be able to offer, not because of his knowledge or his ability, but because of the fact that it's a very dynamic situation that is changing daily.
I talked to Matt today when I was putting the calendar together.
Okay.
He has submitted the budget for audit, And he is now looking at the budget and breaking out pieces to say this is COVID. I mean, he's putting together a packet of information, so he is in the middle of preparing it.
But I will clarify just really simply. This is the 1920 budget
Okay.
that he's going to look at. This is what was spent during
Right.
fiscal year 1920 and where was underspent, overspent. And he also sometimes gives a preview of what it looks like so far into the 2021 budget. But this is a 1920 budget review.
Okay, so we're not talking about projections for the rest
No,
of this.
no. This is all
Okay.
audited, real spend.
Projecting for the rest of this year would be an interesting exercise.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't. my, anyway.
Y'all heard me. Hey, Chuck.
Gillian,
Hi. I have a suggestion. Would we be open to reviewing or having Matt come after our training session? And if that means moving the training session to the 27th in light of we have several new members and a lot of us are only on our first 3-year term, would we want to have a training session prior to hearing about the budget so we have a better understanding of what our jobs are? So we sort of come into hearing the budget a little bit more prepared on our end.
Carol?
I don't know why tonight this button doesn't work right, but anyway, kind of in line with what Gillian has said. I'm questioning, I don't know how many people will apply to fill this vacancy, but if it's anywhere near the number of people who applied last time, it was a fairly time-consuming process. So I'm a little hesitant to schedule Matt on the same night as we might have to do numerous interviews. That might make for a very long and sort of confusing night. So I'd sort of like to keep the two separate. And if that also, enables what Gillian is saying about allowing new members to get their training in before hearing this review, so much the better.
Any other thoughts?
My only comment is that if the budget committee waits until mid-November or later to do the update, the school board's going to hear it first. Because we as a school, the school board will hear it first. If you wait till mid-November, the school board will not want to wait until mid-November to hear the summary of the previous. So the chances are it may be presented to the school board first because the school board's going to need that to help preparing in their minds what the budget's going to be. So it's more of a heads up. I mean, I'm not speaking on behalf of the entire board, but my inclination is the board's going to want to hear that detail before mid-November, just to share.
My interest in facilitating the business of the board is to make sure that you have a full and fair opportunity to be kept up to date on the things that you need to know. And things are changing quickly. And in the past, the Budget Committee has been guided much by lagging indicators. And I think that this is such an important budgetary issue that we need as much information as soon as possible to consider before the fact rather than after the fact. By the 1st of December, quite frankly, the school district will pretty much have its budget in hand. And we will not have an opportunity to understand where they are going with that. And then we will have to subsequently do what we have done in the past, is dig deeper necessarily than we have to when we could be informed all along with a more congenial communication about the financial considerations of the district. Everybody's got a different idea, I think, about what the schools should do. And while many may say that those are policy questions and beyond our purview, the fact that they are all up in the air, even at this date, as Andy points out, without any real clear path forward, I think it's imperative that we get as much financial review as possible and to have as much opportunity to explore the financial vision for the budget before it is completed. Brian?
So recognizing that the duration of October 27th meeting is unpredictable depending on the number of letters of interest, would it be feasible to do the training, as I believe Gillian was suggesting, at the end of that session, roll it into that session? Was I misunderstanding? I thought that was your suggestion.
Not directly, but what I
Okay.
was suggesting was if that meant that we needed to move the training session up sooner, and if we, I don't know how long the training session is sort of predicted to take, but if we could do it on the 27th, and then whomever the new person is would also be involved in the training, sort of, welcome to the board, here, let's train you. And then afterwards, I just thought perhaps if we were all sort of understanding what our role is, it helps to view the budget, past and future, from that perspective versus what our own sort of opinions are coming into it.
So recognizing that we might be putting ourselves in for a long evening, would it be feasible to plan the training session on the tail end of the October 27th meeting and then look to meet with the superintendent the first week in November rather than the second week in November?
Is there a consensus on that meeting date? So identified, yes. All right then, that's what we will do. Pat, you will, oh, I'm sorry.
I'll turn this on. I'm good for the 5th, but you really need to
Microphone a little closer.
You
People at
really
home.
need to communicate with the public that if they're going to apply for that position, then they're expected to stay for training if they make the board. The communication has to be clear. If we're going to do training the same day as the day we fill the vacancy.
No, it's not the same day, right, Pat? She has just suggested,
No, so I thought we were talking about filling the vacancy, tacking on training, so the new person was like, welcome, jump in the fire, and then the update from Matt on the 5th. Is that what everybody thought?
Pat,
On the same day. So then that makes the 27th meeting not that long. Well, right.
yeah, depending. Who knows?
Okay, that makes sense.
All right?
Good
We're all
with
on
me.
board? Well.
Can we just, I think I've got it, but I want to write it down in my notes properly, what meetings or which dates
5 November,
is, what are we doing that date?
financial review from the superintendent.
Okay. And what did we do to the training? Went to the 27th along with the interview?
Training and update the 5th.
Oh, the training is also on the 5th, okay. So I guess then my question is, the training is not a public meeting as opposed to?
Yes, it is. It will be
Yeah.
open to the public.
Okay, because normally it's not an official board meeting.
That's correct, but there's absolutely great benefit to be gained from any of the public that wants to attend to expand their knowledge base of what the responsibilities are of the Budget Committee.
I guess where I'm going is the Budget Committee expected to be here for the training plus?
It is our expectations, as we deliberated last year, that all Budget Committee members will be in attendance
For the training.
for the training. It is an appropriate review and sharing amongst board members of their responsibilities.
Okay, I did not understand that to be past practice, but
Well, it may not necessarily be past practice, Carol.
Okay.
It's just,
I'm just clarifying, if we're changing the practice, I just want to make sure I know what we're changing. Because even at the very last meeting, I asked, is the training session training only, or is it a public meeting? And it was clearly stated then that it was training only, and it was not a public meeting.
That's correct, it was. And after some consideration relative to the value of having public participation, I decided that it would be appropriate.
Okay.
All right.
So would that cancel the meeting on the 17th then and just lump it all on the 5th?
I'm not, I
Like
couldn't,
on my paper here, I just scribbled out 17 and wrote 5th, am I right?
you wrote what?
The 5th.
5th, 5.
So no meeting on the 17th. The
Yes.
meeting on the
Yeah,
5th
right.
is replacing
That's
the 17th.
correct, November
Okay.
5th. And in fact, you'll all be receiving notification relative to the meeting dates and so forth.
Can I ask just for one more clarification? On November 5, you're going to have a combination of the update from Matt on the business, and you're going to do the training. Do you know which order you're going to do that in? Do you anticipate you're going to do the update first and then the training afterwards? I'm just asking because
No,
residents...
I don't know, and any board member here is free to make a motion to change the order of the agenda.
Well, the only reason
if
I'm
they
ask-
so desire.
The only reason
So-
I'm asking is because you said the training was public, which I completely agree with. You could convene the meeting, do the update, then close the meeting, and then just continue with a non-public, with a full public aspect afterwards where you can do it, as long as people know coming into the meeting what the order's going to be. You know, the public, because you're going to have other people that are going to want to listen and things like that.
Well, I must admit that through the mask, Andy, a great deal of that has escaped me, but it will all be a public meeting. There will be no non-public meeting. Speak into the microphone, please.
I think if I'm interpreting what Andy is saying correctly, he's wondering about the possibility of having two back-to-back public meetings so that people who are interested in one or the other don't have to sit through both.
Let me be clear. You have designated on your calendar as the training session as a non-meeting, which means that it can be open for communication with the participants, can ask questions of Matt. In a normal public meeting, they can't. There's the rigor that you've got. If you have a non-meeting and you've got sort of an open thing where the audience can listen, they can technically ask questions of Matt about the budget or things like that if it's a non-meeting. So my question was, do you have the public meeting first where you convene here, Matt gives the update, allows the budget committee to ask questions, then when that's done, you close the meeting, then you go into the non-meeting training where you can get participation from the audience if they have questions. That was sort of the reason that was my intent.
I'm sure I'll have no difficulty conducting the meeting. There will be no non-public portion of it. Gillian.
Okay. So then I move that the order of agenda be training first in this meeting and then financials.
Do we have
I
a second?
That's a smart order.
All those in favor signify so by raising your right hand. Fine. That's how the order of the agenda will be written. Yes, Carol?
I think the question that's never been totally clarified is Andy's point about the training session. You clarified that it's for the public, that the public is allowed, but Andy is still stating it as your original intent of it being a non-meeting, and is that still the case?
No, it's an open meeting.
So it is an official budget committee meeting?
It is an official budget committee training session meeting open to the public.
All right, because that was the opposite of what Andy's understanding was.
So I'm gonna scratch non-meeting off my thing, right? Okay.
Why is the arrow off?
Is there any other business to come before the board this evening?
Move to adjourn.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Meeting's done. Thank you very much.